Right now, I'm the general counsel at Emergency Care Partners, and I oversee legal and compliance operations.
If you look at the statistics, I think on average, 65% of compliance officers or individuals in compliance are female. Do you often find that females in these positions of power, whether it's compliance or legal, feel like it's okay to ask for somebody else's opinion or collaborate with somebody else?
It is okay to be in a meeting and say, the top 3 qualities that I think I would look for and I see in our compliance officer, number 1 being, going back to the book, one of the characteristics that it talks about, the negative traits, is women not always support women. And I want to be the woman that.
How do you offer guidance to your board, who I'm sure that your private equity people sit on?
A lot of our focus up front is making sure that this company, prior to its acquisition or partnership, is compliant with billing audits and other matters, that there aren't any outstanding compliance issues. Also, from a leadership perspective, this has been years in the making, but I finally came to the point that I am a better person when.
Welcome to the Compliance Leadership Lounge with host Ross Ronan, your guide for insightful discussions in healthcare compliance. In our lounge, leaders and experts gather together to share their perspectives and wisdom. So grab a chair, make yourself comfortable, and join the conversation as we dive into the strategies and stories behind effective compliance leadership. Whether you're a CEO, board member, or a compliance enthusiast, you're in the right place to learn, grow, and lead with integrity.
Welcome, Basia, to the Compliance Leadership Lounge. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks for having me.
Now, we've known each other for now about 15 years, I think. And you just coming out of a law firm, I believe, and you're a baby lawyer at that time when you came into our healthcare company.
I was 2 years out of law school, barely, I think. Yeah.
That was crazy. Not married, didn't have any kids, just out on your own. That was pretty exciting.
1 year in Colorado. I moved from Chicago.
That's
so
right.
I was new to Colorado as well.
I remember seeing your picture when we were interviewing you, and you had this red face and everything. And I think we had a conversation about this as well. Many years later, I said, wow, this, like, your face was so red. What was going on? And you're like, hey, I was walking to go get these headshots done at my law firm, and it was Chicago, and it was like sub-zero temperatures or something like that.
It was actually Colorado in Boulder.
Oh,
they
was it?
made
Okay.
me go, and I had to walk through, I don't know where the pictures were, but it was here, and I had frostbite. So
I was like, this would be an interesting hire. But anyways, it was great. It was great. Tell us a little bit about your background, your experience, not only in law, but healthcare, where you came from and where you're at today.
Sure. When I was in law school, I knew that I wanted to do something in healthcare. My mom had a background in healthcare, and I really liked the medicine aspect of it. Not sure why I never decided to go into med school.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
But when I was in law school at St. Louis University, I did my health law certificate knowing that I would go that route. But I ended up in a law firm in Chicago doing malpractice defense. And again, I liked the medical aspect, but I learned very quickly that litigation was just not for me. And at that point, I was dating now my husband. So we made the decision to move to Colorado. I did a brief stint in real estate litigation for about 7 months. Yes.
I should call you up when I have a problem. I didn't
please
know
don't. But then I started working for our old company. That's where I met you in the fall of 2009. And strangely enough, I was actually hired to do litigation. And the day that I started, I was told that all of the litigation has been settled and there was no position for me. I was a contracted attorney at that point. My former boss, Craig Wilson, decided to make a spot for me, and I became an operations attorney. Within, I want to say 4 months, I was hired permanently. And that's where I started my healthcare career. I started doing contracts, hospital agreements, and it slowly grew into meeting people in operations and getting my feet wet with dealing with business folks, being their partner. And that role slowly evolved into regulatory and compliance. So That's where I got my start in legal and compliance.
Yeah, we worked together in a lot of different fashions at our previous company. So that's
Yes.
great. So what are you doing now?
Right now, I'm the general counsel at Emergency Care Partners. And I oversee legal and compliance operations. And that's also where you and I work together. When I started, the company was brand new. And my new boss, Bill Yarbrough, brags that I was his first hire as an attorney. And I wanted to stand up a compliance program, and you helped me achieve that.
Which is doing great today,
yes,
too.
It is.
You have your own compliance officer and functioning very well,
yes.
I hear. So
that's far,
great.
So good.
That's great. The Compliance Leadership Lounge talks about leadership and relationships. I always start off with all the guests of really talking about what was one of the books or things that really influenced you as a leader. You run a legal department, you run a compliance program, you're an executive part of Emergency Care Partners. What kind of books inspired you to want to have a good leadership kind of response?
One of the books that really spoke to me was a book titled Lead Like a Woman by Deborah Pegg. It's a very simple book, but it's so great for women because it focuses on the characteristics that women have, but they many times hide or they tend to not use to their advantage. So one of the characteristics that it talks about is compassion and collaboration, being intuitive, following what you think you should do, being resilient. But what really spoke to me was the collaborative piece. Yeah, you know this, I know this. In our line of business, collaboration is everything. And one of the lines in that book says, 2 minds, 3 minds are better than one. And coming up with ideas and strategies for running the legal department or compliance, but also aligning those with the values of the business to grow the business. Collaboration is everything, whether amongst the departments or within your department.
So it's interesting. I grew up with my career being a predominantly female career, whether it's nursing or even getting into compliance, which if you look at the statistics, I think on average is 65% of compliance officers or individuals in compliance are female. And I think in healthcare law and general counsel type roles, it's a very similar kind of a 50-50 split on that standpoint. When you think about females in general, and maybe this kind of relates to this book, do you often find that females don't feel like in these positions of power, whether it's compliance or legal, feel like it's okay to ask for somebody else's opinion or collaborate with somebody else because it may seem, hey, I need to know this answer to justify where I'm at in this position. Let's just say a counterpart male may not feel that way. Do they talk about that? Is that a big thing?
They do talk about it, actually. The book focuses on women not feeling comfortable asking for help. And you and I had this conversation many times when I was a less experienced attorney. It is okay to be in a meeting and say, I'm not sure about this. Let me think about it. Let me do some research and I'll get back to you. And that research may be collaborating with another person in your department or a business partner. But it's okay to say that and move on and deliver the answer, a very cohesive answer later on. But the book has a large focus on that. And then also on the flip side, it talks about the characteristics that women should work on eliminating from their profession. And one of them being lacking confidence. Many times, and again, that's a topic that you and I discuss frequently about imposter syndrome.
Right.
I don't belong in this position. I shouldn't be here. There are people more qualified. I think more women think that way versus men, but you need to know you're there for a reason and you belong there. I have found that's more of a trait that's attributable to women more so than men. And it goes hand in hand, I think, with collaboration, that many times when you lack confidence, you feel like you need to have every single answer. You need to answer on the spot. But on the flip side, it's okay to reach out for help and get those resources. That's why we have outside counsel. That's why we have mentors. That's why we have friends in the same profession. There's always somebody to collaborate with to provide you with a good answer for whatever situation you're facing.
Yeah, we talk a lot about being a compliance executive. And one of the things that we've found, this is a great kind of segue between leadership and compliance and general counsel, is that oftentimes, and it may be because it's predominantly female, it may not be, I don't really know. I think males and females both have this situation in compliance because it's the nature of compliance, is that companies oftentimes, and I just spoke on this the other day, general counsel or in-house counsel positions have been around for over 200 years. Like I think it started in the Civil War. And compliance positions really didn't come out until the Federal Sentencing Guidelines and the OIG came out with their guidelines in healthcare, which indicated that, and that's 25, 26 years ago, something very short period of time, you think about it. And so when you think about like corporations and businesses like ECP, Emergency Care Partners, and other ones, they put a lot of emphasis, even you said, Bill, first hire, he was very proud of this, to hire a general counsel, right? So his first hire wasn't a compliance officer, it was a general counsel, which I get, and that makes total sense. But I think a lot of leadership feel that the general counsel is a position that has been around for a while, and they are then allowed to utilize their resources like outside counsel and different people to help bolster their position as a lawyer within the company. How often do you see that from a compliance standpoint? How often do you see the compliance officer go out and say, hey, I need to check with somebody on this answer? And the executive level individuals, whether it's the CEO, the board, or anybody else, or even the general counsel, go, oh, we don't have that in the budget. Oh, no, go do the research or go figure it out yourself. And so I think a lot of the compliance individuals don't feel empowered to utilize their resources to be able to do it. Same conversation that you and I had many years ago, where you're like, hey, I'm trying to prove myself. I need to know all these answers. And the answer really is, well, you just need to know how to get the answer through your resources to be able to pull that in.
Right.
So it's very interesting, and it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your perspective as a general counsel. And you, like you said before, you are responsible for the compliance program, which is great. We've actually talked about how that infrastructure should look and how it works for you guys, and I think it's right. When you talk about the qualities of a compliance officer, which you just hired and you've worked with me for a number of years, and you think about them as a strategic leader, what are those qualities that you're looking for that compliance officer to be? Even though they report to you, you really do want them to be somewhat of a colleague because they have a different expertise and knowledge than maybe so you do. So what do you look for in qualities?
I was thinking about this question, and the top 3 qualities that I think I would look for and I see in our compliance officer, number 1 being integrity. You in compliance, integrity is everything. But that's on the compliance side, and we have to look at the business side. So it's very important for the compliance officer to understand the business. You can't have a successful compliance officer if they don't understand what the company does. You have to understand the goals, what the company strives to achieve. And you have to, the third one would be the knowledge of the compliance regulations and laws to help them achieve that while supporting the growth or the development of the company. So I would say those 3 are probably the 3 most important ones that I feel a compliance officer would have. I think one other one that comes to mind is communication. You have to build relationships within the company so that people feel comfortable coming to you and reporting issues, or not even reporting issues, asking for guidance. How many times do we see contracts with various compensation models, with billing issues, things like that? You want the compliance officer to be there for you to answer those questions before any issues arise.
That's really interesting. And when you come up with your 3 qualities that you've looked at, and I'm sure that you have the same kind of qualities as a general counsel, and you try to put those into place. You think back on your tenure, whether it's experience or mentorship, what pieces have helped you define what needs to be the qualities for both general counsel and compliance officer? Did you use a lot of mentors? Did you use a lot of coaching? Did you use outside counsel? What's your biggest?
I used a lot of mentors, and I still do. I was fortunate that I had mentors all throughout my career, and you've been one that has been consistent from the time that I started my career in healthcare. But my former boss, Craig, was my legal mentor. He taught me how to analyze issues and how to be a partner. We always had this discussion. You don't want to be known as saying no. You want to be a partner. You want to find solutions that from a business perspective, help the business folks reach their goal, but do it legally within the bounds. And it's the same thing with compliance. You want to be compliant, you want to find ways, but you want to do it the right way. And of course, with you, we had so many discussions, and it was not only on the compliance level, but just overall career development. One certain conversation comes to mind.
They were all positive.
They weren't. They weren't. But that's my point. Sometimes you have to have that relationship with a mentor to hear the bad in order to reach the good.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I had many conversations where you told me you need to step up. You need to think, you need to take charge and be the person that you want to be. Where do you want to be in your career? Do you want to grow? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to do contracts, which is fine too, but you have to decide for yourself. And those conversations weren't pleasant. I walked away not feeling great.
We don't talk about that.
But yeah, though we should talk about it, because that's what got me to where I am now. I took a few days to think about it. I'm like, I didn't like hearing it, but I needed to hear it. And those are the mentors you want. You don't want somebody to tell you all the good and leave you to figure out the bad. And then from a business standpoint, my major in college was political science with a minor in international studies and Spanish, no business whatsoever. So when I started being in healthcare and wanting to be a business partner, I needed to learn the business acumen. And Bill, my current boss, was the person who mentored me. The number of times that he sat with me and taught me every line of a pro forma of a business and what's important, why it's important, how does it pertain to legal or even compliance. Till this day, when I pull up a pro forma, that's the first thing I think of. He taught me what I know about business. So mentorship is so crucial at whatever level of your career.
Yeah. One of my mentors and coaches, Dan Martell, one thing that he always says is, I have a coach for everything. And he's sold multi-million dollars in companies and all these other kind of things. And I really think about that to heart. Really, it's if you want to go do a triathlon, you should get a triathlon coach. If you want to learn piano, you should get a piano coach. If you want to learn how to play the cello, you should get a cello coach. So that kind of mentorship and coaching should always be part of anybody's perspective. And when you talk about going from being a mentee to a mentor, I'm sure with a number of experience, the years of experience that you've had being a general counsel and the numbers of years of experience you've had being in compliance or being responsible for compliance, how do you see yourself as a mentor to either lawyers that are underneath your purview or the compliance officer that is currently under your purview?
I strive to convey the same knowledge that other people have conveyed to me. And the support that I've gotten has taught me that other people who are not as far along in my career, they deserve the same thing. At conferences or when I present or when I go to conferences, I like meeting younger, less experienced attorneys. And I love when they reach out and ask, can I reach out to you with an issue? Yes, you can, because that's what I had. And going back to the book, one of the characteristics that it talks about, the negative traits, is women not always support women. And I want to be the woman that supports other women. My compliance officer is a woman. I want to support her growth. I want her to shine. I never want anybody within our company or outside to feel like they don't have a mentor or a person supporting them.
This episode of the Compliance Leadership Lounge is brought to you by Ronan Healthcare Compliance. At Ronan Healthcare Compliance, we believe in transforming healthcare compliance from a checkbox attitude to a strategic advantage. With decades of expertise, our team provides innovative solutions tailored to your organization's unique needs. We don't just help you meet your standards, we elevate your business, ensuring ethical practices are at the heart of what you do. Whether you're navigating complex regulations or seeking to enhance your compliance strategy, Ronan Healthcare is your partner in achieving excellence in healthcare compliance. Ronan Healthcare Compliance, redefining compliance, empowering leadership. Visit us at ronanhc.com to learn more. Now, back to the show.
When you talk about mentoring your compliance officer and really trying to get them in front of your C-suite, right? So your boss is obviously the CEO, her boss is you. What things do you recommend that a compliance officer do, especially like in your situation in your organization where they're one step removed from the C-suite level? How do you see them interact, or how do you suggest that they interact or get collaborative with the C-suite outside of being underneath your kind of purview?
As part of my position, I want to make sure that she's well known within the company. So we have the traditional compliance committees, we have the executive compliance committee, we have the board compliance committee. I make sure I barely say a word on those committees. I want her to take charge. I want her to answer all the questions. I want her to build that relationship, whether it's with our CEO, COO, CFO, or the board. So when she presents, it's all on her, unless there's a question that needs answering from me. But I want her to build that trust and that competence where when they know they can come to her. And she has taken an excellent approach where a lot of her discussion and presentation is open discussion, where the materials that she presents leave room for questions and discussions and strategy. And I want her to have that going both ways. I want the C-suite and the board to be able to come to her directly, not through me, and vice versa. I want her to have that path to reach out to others without my involvement. Although this hasn't happened yet, there may come a time where we don't agree on something and she has to go around me and go to others to report on an issue. And I want her to have that relationship. Ultimately, it's for the good of the company.
It's funny you say that because anecdotally, one story that I always tell, and I think it's really applicable to this situation, is it was with our previous company in the early days. Compliance reported to legal. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not.
Yeah, it was before you. So we reported to legal and we were under a corporate integrity agreement. So I had to actually call the OIG and go, hey, our CIA says this can't happen. Can this happen? They said, you know what, as long as you have the right parameters, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot, right? And this is how we set your situation up, is there, as long as you have the right parameters in place, access to the CEO, access to the board, then it's okay. And we don't worry about that. And then one of our podcasts, Todd Zimmerman was the general counsel at the time. So it was really funny because we had one of the first board meetings, actually it was probably the first two board meetings, where we'd go to this board, and relatively new board for me. One of the board members was an owner of a outside counsel, big firm in the country. And we would sit and I would do my presentation and Todd would sit here and I would sit here and I would go over my report. The partner, the owner of the law firm, would direct every question to the general counsel.
Interesting.
On my report, every single question. And at some point I'm like, hey, over here. But he was really good, just as you were saying. He was really good because he was one of my mentors as well. It was, hey, I appreciate your question. Ross, what do you think about this situation? Or, yeah, we'll look into this. Ross, have you had an experience with blah, 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 blah? And it took 2 or 3 times at the board meetings to be able to go, oh my God, now I'm getting the questions directly asked to me versus going through my boss, who is a general counsel, to me. So what you described is really focusing the efforts back to the compliance officer so that they can be empowered to do what they want to do or say what they need to say, in addition to still showing that you're a mentor to them.
I like that.
Yeah, you're doing it. So obviously you learned it somewhere. So that's fabulous. But that was one of my early things to say. I really had a lot of respect for my general counsel for that, and my boss.
And I know you had Bill Sanger on your podcast, and he said the same thing. And I'm not saying anything that he didn't say, but he's on multiple boards, and he insisted that the compliance officer is involved and has that direct path. Hopefully it becomes more prevalent and helps the companies.
It's a protection too for them. So
exactly.
One of the biggest things we always talk about in your kind of situation and other situations where compliance and legal either commingle or co-report is really understanding and identifying the different challenges between kind of legal strategies and compliance initiatives. And like you've alluded to sometimes before, sometimes they don't align. And that's one of the reasons why the OIG gets really bent out of shape when they don't report, or they do report to each other, or they're the same person. What are those challenges and how do you deal with them from your perspective?
Our company is 5 years in, and I'm happy to say that so far we haven't had any large issues that put us at odds with each other between legal and compliance. But I do fully recognize that legal has different purpose. They have the same goals, let me say, protecting the company, making sure we do everything correctly, but we achieve those sometimes through different means. And my primary job or function in legal is protecting the company and maintaining attorney-client privilege, and sometimes very zealously protecting the company. Compliance position is mitigating, discovering and mitigating the risk. And those may not always align. So to the extent that so far so good, we've been collaborating, and I keep her appraised of everything that comes up, whether it's day-to-day business in contracting or any issues. She keeps me appraised of billing audits and everything that we do. When that day comes, I will be reaching out to my mentors to see how I can handle it.
It's not if, it's when, right?
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
It does. And it happens all the time. And I think this is one of the reasons you're so fortunate, because I think in your kind of background and your history and how you approach things, you have a very compliance driven type of mentality as well. That's not saying you're not a fabulous general counsel and have that kind of best interest for the company, but without those big issues that have come up, it really doesn't test the waters too much, right?
And I hope it doesn't, but like you said, it's a matter of when, not if.
It's pretty amazing the independence that compliance needs to have while still just trying to understand the business. And really good compliance officers / compliance executives that we're trying to help build really can understand the business aspect of it. Like you said, that's one of the qualities that a good compliance officer needs, is that understanding of the business and how it works. One of the things I often talk about is not only understanding how the business works, but understanding how people, executives in the C-suite, including the general counsel, need to do their job accordingly, as well as you need to do your job. You just don't get to throw everybody else's obligations out of the window. The general counsel has an obligation to the company, attorney-client privilege, to protect the officers, directors, and the company in and of itself to further its business needs, right? And the compliance officer is really there to detect, mitigate, and prevent things from happening. So I think that's well spoken. It's not an easy thing to answer, especially in this industry, for sure. I want to move from kind of leadership to more of business standpoint. There's a lot of talk about private equity right now in the world, in healthcare specifically. FTC is coming down on a lot of different private equity groups that have been rolling up different companies. And I don't want to get into that too much, but it is a focus in healthcare. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on both compliance and general counsels to make sure that they can navigate the waters, because we do a lot of work with private equity. You guys are private equity backed. How do you see that kind of going forward in a legal and compliance way? And how do you offer guidance to your board, who I'm sure that your private equity people sit on? How do you offer guidance to say, hey, you know what? We're okay because we have X, we have Y, we have Z, and we feel like we are on the top of this, on top of the issues?
Yeah, our private equity has been from day one very receptive to implementing a robust compliance program. I don't mean checking the boxes, an actual functional program. In the 5 years, it has grown, it has expanded, and they fully supported it. I can tell you at the beginning, when we implemented our hotline, the questions that I was getting, why are there no contacts?
Which is great, because usually it's, hey, there's too many contacts.
Exactly. People, you spread the word and you want people to call in and voice their issues. When we weren't getting that, our board members were asking, why are you guys not doing enough to spread the word that this exists? And it has grown, which is great. PE is in the business of growth and expanding the businesses they own. And our PE firm understands very well that what happens during diligence may have a long-lasting impact on that business that will make it or break it. So a lot of our focus up front is making sure that this company, prior to its acquisition or partnership, is compliant with billing audits and other matters, that there aren't any outstanding compliance issues. Also, from a leadership perspective, when it helps them get to know the people who are working at that company, because post transaction, they come on our team.
Sure.
And we have to make sure that they have the same values and the same concerns from a compliance and legal standpoint. I'm happy to say that our PE firm has been very involved in that, to make sure that compliance is a primary focus, understanding that that may very well impact the business
Sure.
if you don't focus on that.
Yeah, and I think it's often mistaken that just because private equity is putting money into healthcare and they're rolling these things up, that they're unwilling to resource and finance and fund compliance programs so that they can grow and they can expand and they can provide access to patients more and good quality of care across the board, right? We do a lot of board presentations where private equity sits on it, as well as other board members. And we do talk about that. These are the steps you need to put into place to ensure that you live in a compliant world at this point in time, and ensure the investments that you're making are appropriately done. So I think with a lot of education, like you said, a lot of discussions with them, and a lot of answering their questions of saying, this is how you need to do this to make sure they're willing to put the money into it. And I think this may be a blip in the legal stratosphere right now, but it's definitely a hot topic that we talk about a lot. And I'd loved your feedback on how you educate them accordingly. So just to wrap it up, and I appreciate your time, Basia. Health is wealth, as we say it in this industry. And we feel like we're a healthcare company. And if you're not thinking about your physical, your spiritual, and your mental abilities and how you take care of yourself, then you're not doing it right. What do you do to take care of yourself?
I try to have a routine, a workout routine, which many times on your watch.
I do.
But this has been years in the making, but I finally came to the point that I am a better person when I work out in the mornings or whenever I can. And with kids and work and everything else, sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's around the soccer field, doing laps like a hamster, but
nice.
But I try to get it done. Aside from working out, I work remotely. Seeing my coworkers at the office is something that just fills my soul and makes me feel part of a team. So I do try to make it out to our office in Pensacola as much as I can to see everyone, to feel connected, to be available. Family travel is always great. And also just growing as an attorney, going to conferences and functions that help me meet new people, get new ideas, grow as an attorney, as a leader. So just try to do as much as I can in little time.
Filling up those buckets are great, physical, mental, and spiritual. And that's awesome that you do that. Basia, thank you so much for taking the time today. Very insightful in your discussions on leadership and compliance. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you for spending time with us in the Compliance Leadership Lounge with Ross Ronan. If you've enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your network. Your engagement helps us continue to bring in-depth and influential content in the world of healthcare compliance. Stay tuned for our next episode where we further explore leadership dynamics and compliance. Until then, remember, effective compliance is about leading with integrity, and leadership is about making a difference.